Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. It's just a few days to the July 4th, 250th birthday of America. Uh, of course, America is still discussing the June 30th, 2026 Supreme Court decision upholding the uh, birthright citizenship of the 14th Amendment. Barely, right? It was a 5-4 decision, and saying that, well, it violated saying that President Trump's executive order to uh, end birthright citizenship violated the 14th Amendment. That was a 5-4 decision, but his executive order was struck down by a 6-3 decision. Now, it turns out the sticking point, the reason they went was concerning the phrase being subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And I thought, that's not that doesn't seem to be a controversial word, especially for lawyers. But lawyers like to debate. In any event, the Supreme Court chose to indulge the president. I mean, there was an executive order out there, right? So yes, it had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. It ended up going there for clarification. The Supreme Court interprets our laws. That's the purpose of the Supreme Court. They don't create laws. It's Congress that makes the laws, right? So the 14th Amendment that was at issue, it was Congress that created it. The president doesn't create laws. Now, the executive order, right, he can make laws for his executive branch of government because but the decisions, the laws, the rules he makes, he promulgates, that's what it's called. They're non-binding. So he can make statutes, but they're non-binding on others, right? But people who work within the executive arm would have to, uh, carry out his instructions, but they're non-binding. So he couldn't make a law, right, for the whole of America, for American citizens, regarding a constitutional matter. So that's why it had to go to the courts, and the Supreme Court struck it down by a 6-3 decision. Uh, and So it's Congress that makes the laws, right? Congress makes the laws. Congress created the 14th Amendment. But that's not what I'm discussing today. Today, I just want to um, discuss the meaning of the term jurisdiction, right? Jurisdiction, and then I guess it will help us understand subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So, what has um, the debated uh, phrase in the 14th Amendment, that's within the Citizenship Clause, right, is subject to the jurisdiction but thereof. But let me just recall what the 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause says. It is all persons born or naturalized in the United States, uh, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Now, I was watching a TV, something on television or whatever, and someone who was educated, actually a writer, was saying subject to the jurisdiction thereof was actually alluding to the state wherein they reside. No, that's incorrect, right? Not that's inaccurate. Now, I can also I can explain this because one, I hold a Juris Doctor degree from George Washington University Law School in DC, so I'm a lawyer. A Juris Doctor, that's the Latin for Doctor of Law. So I'm a lawyer. I'm not an attorney, and this is not legal advice. There's a difference between lawyer and an attorney, by the way. I've done a video explaining that all attorneys are lawyers, but not all lawyers are attorneys, right? So, but I'm a lawyer, so I can explain what jurisdiction means. So if one has a challenge, right, with a word, all they have to do is refer to the dictionary, right? Look it up to the dictionary, instead of trying to figure out from what they think it is, instead of speculating or conjecturing, right? So jurisdiction has several meanings in the dictionary when you go and check the dictionary, but they're related, right? They're related, and so it depends on the context, right? In this context, it means authority or power to administer justice and to apply the laws, right? It could also mean jurisdiction can also mean the power a court has over a person, right? So all these things are actually part of what jurisdiction means in the Citizenship Clause. So basically, does the United States, right, and it can be the states as well, right? But importantly, does the United States and the state wherein they reside, do they have power to administer their laws, right? To administer justice over the individual, and the power to apply their laws to the individual, right? Who is a citizen? Can they apply their laws to can they apply their laws to the individual? That's basically what it means. Again, all persons born in or naturalized in the United States. All persons born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So, and the state wherein they reside just means they are citizens of the state as well, wherever they live, right? So that's just what it's saying. And they're citizens of the United States and they're citizens of the state. It's not necessarily restricting subject to the jurisdiction thereof to the state, right? The phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof is just saying that citizen, right, the person is subject to the laws, right, to the laws of the United States and the state or whatever, is subject to the laws of the state, and they can apply, their laws to that person, right? The courts have power over the person, right? So that means they can be summoned to court. An arrest warrant can be issued to the person. They can he can go through a trial, and he can be convicted or acquitted. So the courts, their laws have power over the person. They can apply their laws to the individual. Now, who are the people who are the people that can be within the territory of a country that a country cannot apply their laws towards? Diplomats, right? Diplomats. There's another category of people, right? Like an invading army, a nation that has invaded you, that's occupying you, right? You can't apply their laws. They throw away your laws. But I'm not going to discuss them, not to confuse things. Let's focus on diplomats, right? So an example of how diplomats, right, and it's called diplomatic immunity. We're thinking of, this was 1868, right, 19th century. It was the Congress of Vienna that governed diplomatic immunity, meaning diplomats are immune to the laws where they're in, where they're serving as a diplomat, right? They're immune to those laws. That's Congress of Vienna. Today, 1961, today we apply the 1961 Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations, right? Vienna Convention. That's for 1961. And I'll give you an example just to show you how diplomats are not subject to the laws of their host nation, right? So people know of Julian Assange, right? Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, that America, England, and because England is a partner of America, right, with respect to espionage. They're both members of the Five Eyes, that's the intelligence communities, right? The intelligence community cooperate together. That's England, Canada, Australia, America. So WikiLeaks people know of the WikiLeaks, the leaking of U.S. classified documents, right? Top secret classified documents. So Julian Assange, U.S. wanted Julian Assange, England wanted Julian Assange, but for 7 years, Julian Assange, who was a wanted man, he was in hiding. He was hiding out in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, right? So that's the embassy. They have diplomatic immunity. So America, England, they couldn't enter that embassy. So Julian Assange was there for 7 years until the embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy, decided to revoke his asylum because it was like they'd had it. It was just too much. But that's an example of diplomatic immunity. So England, they had no power. They couldn't apply their laws. They couldn't issue an arrest warrant and enter. If the state had power over diplomats, then a judge can just issue an arrest warrant and a police or search warrant, and they can invade that embassy and seek him out and arrest him. But they don't have any power. They can't apply their laws to the person, right? To a diplomat, to a foreign accredited diplomat, right? So and I've explained before that foreign diplomats in America, accredited foreign diplomats in America, if they break our laws, what can America do? All they could do is expel that diplomat, right? So because those diplomats are not subject to the jurisdiction, they're not subject to the laws of the United States and their states, the US can't apply their laws to that person. Another example is, if anybody remembers the former dictator of Panama, Manuel Noriega. So in December, was it 1989? Anyway, under President George Bush, the 41st president, George H. Herbert Walker Bush, right? The senior, he had U.S. forces invade Panama and to capture Manuel Noriega, who was a notorious drug dealer as well. But he ran into the Vatican embassy in Panama City. He ran into the Vatican embassy. So U.S. forces couldn't go in there, right? They couldn't violate the diplomatic immunity of the diplomats in the Vatican embassy in Panama City. They couldn't go in. So he hid out there, I think from December 24, 1989 till January the 3rd, 1990. So the U.S. forces that had invaded a whole nation, Panama, they were at war. It was a limited operation. They had invaded Panama. They were trying to get the dictator, just the way they invaded Venezuela at the beginning of this year and removed the Venezuelan president to extradited him. That's President Nicolas Maduro, right, who is in America facing charges, right, for drug dealing as well, trafficking or whatever, him and his wife. But American forces, the U.S. forces that had successfully invaded Panama, they couldn't enter the Vatican the Vatican embassy in Panama City due to diplomatic immunity. So nations respect the immunity of diplomats, right? They couldn't go in. Eventually, it was Manuel Noriega himself that came out of the embassy, right? He gave up because the American forces subjected him to psychological warfare. So they played 24 hours non-stop music, loud music. They were playing Van Halen and Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses, I used to like them when I was a kid, right? They were playing loud music, Guns N' Roses music, right? Slash was one of the guitarists, by the way. Who knows? Slash's mom was actually a Nigerian woman, right? Olare, his father was white, but his mom was a Nigerian woman. No, not Olare. I can't remember her name. Olare was that was a slip of tongue. Olare is a black female that was in Michael Jackson's movie Thriller. So sometimes, by the way, it's good when I'm talking. I try to So I try to talk in an extemporaneous way. I extemporize, even though I know what it is I want to say. But so I try to make it informal, right? Talk in an informal style. So so that's why I add bits and pieces of information, right? That I think is interesting. So the way the U.S. forces were able to force Manuel Noriega to surrender and come out from the Vatican embassy, which had immunity, right? They had diplomatic immunity, so the U.S. could not invade the embassy, right? Uh, was by playing loud music, and for some reason they chose to play Guns N' Roses. I don't know why they didn't play rap, or I wonder if somebody can say, hey, that they discriminated in their choice of music. I'm just being facetious, but yeah. So that is what jurisdiction means. Jurisdiction means the nation, that country, that, in terms of us, the United States, right? Our courts can administer justice on the person. They can arrest, they can issue an arrest warrant, a subpoena, have the person appear in court. They can face trial, they can be acquitted or convicted. So we can apply our laws to the person. You cannot apply our laws to diplomats, but you can apply our laws to international students, right? You can apply our laws to if an illegal, undocumented person, right? They don't have diplomatic immunity. The reason why America or a state can apply its laws to individuals that are within their territory, because you have jurisdiction, you have authority. Jurisdiction also means authority within your territory, right? Territorial authority, power, right? Your sovereignty as well, right? The reason why, power, authority to enforce your laws. The reason why it's an issue is because there's a certain group of people, and that's diplomats, that have a shield, right? They can be in the territory of a nation, but they have a shield protecting them, right? That makes them immune to the laws of that place, right? They're immune to the laws of that place. If a diplomat breaks America's laws, remember that. All diplomats typically, they don't act arbitrarily, right? To be a diplomat, you're a well-behaved person, so they're well-behaved. The reason why we have nations ratified this diplomatic immunity thing, the Vienna Convention, for instance, is so that diplomats representing a foreign government, if they're at war, so that you don't abuse them, right? Back in the day, before the agreements, the treaties regarding diplomatic immunity existed, people used to abuse diplomats, right? And they could kill them, they could arrest them, and things like that. So you want to make sure that a representative of a foreign government that's in your territory, if they're representing the foreign government in an official capacity, so they're accredited diplomats, right? Then you don't want to abuse them. You don't want to arbitrarily, they don't have to fear for their person or their lives, and that includes their families as well. So they have diplomatic immunity. They're immune to the laws. They're not subject to the jurisdiction, right? So jurisdiction just basically means laws. They're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They're not subject to the jurisdiction of that state that they're living in, right? So that's what jurisdiction means. Jurisdiction means the power to administer justice and to apply a nation's laws, right, to an individual. The power to apply justice, to administer justice and apply its laws, their power, the authority over someone. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I hope this was helpful. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.